on this episode of Edge of the Web.
Think about a crowd of people at a basketball game. That crowd of people, the only thing you can probably discern about those people is that they all like basketball.
Right.
That's probably it. So if you have lists that are too big, like everybody who goes to your website, Google will not generate a similar audience if it can't discern a pattern.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Hear and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, alongside Tom Broadbeck, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
All right. Well, we were talking about space before we started here. Did you know you have to close your eyes when you go into space? If you get jettisoned into space, you need to close your eyes, evidently because of pressure or something like that. But that's some of the concepts we have here at Edge. Hey, I'm your host, Aaron Sparks, CEO of Site Strategics and Edge Media Studios. Every week we bring you the latest cutting edge. See, there's a pun there, right, Tom? I haven't done it in a while. Cutting edge digital marketing trends, and we certainly focus on great innovators inside the marketplace of online marketing. And we do this for a couple of reasons. One, just to make sure that we're bringing you, our audience and our listeners, our fans, some trending topics to make sure that you're continually learning what's happening in the digital marketing space. On top of that, demystifying. There's so much out there that you got to break apart and understand what's good for you, whether or not you should actually bank on that tactic, let alone if it's actually real or not. On top of that, we also focus on keeping our powder dry here. So it's a constant learning lesson for us each and every week. So that's why we do what we do at Edge of the Web Radio. I want to introduce our guest to you real quick. We got Michelle Morgan, Director of Client Services of Clix Marketing. How are you doing? You're in studio.
I am in studio.
You're not a Tom.
No, I made the trip down here because I figured it would be better to do it in person.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
We need more guests like that, Tom.
We'll work on it.
All right.
We'll work on it.
And we got Tom Broadbeck, who's in the producer's seat today, and he's the Director of Digital Media here at Site Strategics.
Hi. How's it going?
Sir. Very good. Very good. That's a good shot for you, man.
I was gonna
You like that?
Right through the mic. That's perfect.
Get out of the way of the mic. Stand.
Well, we would love to go through some news with you and really talk about what's trending right now.
Let's do it.
Excellent. All right. So let's take you through the latest digital marketing news.
I was very excited to start my reportings.
This week's trending topics.
All right. So let's just jump right into it. From the Next Web, we got a story here. LinkedIn is forcing some users to use hashtags to post updates. LinkedIn is actually trying to force them to use hashtags. So, Tom, what are we talking about here? Why is LinkedIn being so heavy-handed on this?
I have no idea. I was on LinkedIn the other day trying to promote the show.
Yep.
Our last show that we just did, and it made me put like 2 or 3 hashtags in before I even post the show. That was really annoying.
Why would that? Why would
I don't
that
know.
be?
I don't know why they do that, but I'm just imagining the 60-year-olds that are on LinkedIn and don't know what hashtags are.
Well, first, I mean, they're literally trying to force the users into a space to build a whole nother level of resonance that hasn't even been utilized inside of LinkedIn.
I didn't even know there were hashtags for LinkedIn.
Until you got pissed off enough because it kept on. So you had to write an article about it. What is the deal here? So LinkedIn social media rep has since confirmed the test. So they're actually rolling out a test on Twitter as well. The representative added the test was designed to better understand the value of using hashtags in posts and help members discover and join relevant conversations. So Instagram's, not Instagram, hashtags inside of LinkedIn. Michelle, what do you think about this?
I think it is probably worth a test. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. But
Sure.
It seems just a little bit silly to me. I think that I talk to a lot of people on social media, and just in the way that you use it organically, all that kind of thing. I think people like LinkedIn because it's not like the other channels.
That's right.
So making it like the other channels is probably not going to be too terribly helpful. And that, and plus, I don't feel like people use hashtags in the same way that they used to. Maybe they're trying to capitalize on a lot of people with big social commentary hashtags right
Sure.
now and trying to like jump on that bandwagon, but it just seems a little bit silly. I think there was a quote in the article that I thought resonated with me really well. It's one thing to offer hashtags so people can use them if they find them useful. It's another thing to force people to use hashtags to be able to post on the website in the first place. So that seems a little bit silly.
It does, and it's especially how much, not trouble, but how tough it was for LinkedIn to get back into regular use. I mean,
Yes.
they were in the bottom drawer of social media
Yeah.
for a long time, and boy, they have built a much better platform
Absolutely.
year over year. But why in the world would you force your users to use something that they're not even naturally aligned to do?
Right. I mean, they're working on trying to get people to engage more on the news feed. They're doing a lot of stuff. They've now got the videos that have come out recently, and they're trying to do a lot of good stuff with. I feel like, if anything, I probably go to LinkedIn more if I want to find articles to read, that sort of thing, than I used to.
Right.
So I'm sure they're trying to get people to engage a little bit better on the social sharing, the content. They started now you can write blog posts within LinkedIn. I'm sure it has a lot to do with just the engagement factor, but that seems to me more, the forcing of the hashtag seems more like a turn off than a turn on.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen some mistakes like that happen from Facebook.
Yeah.
Year over year, and it doesn't sound appealing whatsoever.
No.
All right, another article from Search Engine
social
Land by
sharing.
Greg Sterling. Waze, the application Waze, launches local ads primarily aimed at small and medium-sized businesses as well as franchises. Waze has 100 million active users who spend an average of 11 hours per month in the app. Previewed about a year ago, Waze is now introducing Waze Local map-based ads aimed primarily, although not exclusively, at small businesses, designed to be simple to buy and set up. It actually featured 3 ad units: the branded pin, promoted search, and zero speed takeover. Tom, what's zero speed takeover here?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I tell you what it is if you're actually in traffic,
Okay.
and if you're using a Waze app, okay, it doesn't want to throw an ad at you if you're actually moving.
Driving. There you go.
So zero speed is
I've not used Waze.
you haven't used Waze.
No.
That's actually a pretty cool tool.
But I can see how this is valuable for somebody who can't maybe necessarily afford a full AdWords budget. This
Yep.
could be for your local retail shops to kind of test the waters in to see if you can't create a little niche
Right.
market for your advertising.
Absolutely, and it's dialed in. It's natural for Waze to be able to be utilized that way. It's a local proximal application, very similar to what Foursquare was doing with their ad space a while back. So they give you some statistics on impressions, clicks, navigations, call, and URL information, as well as info button clicks. Any idea? Well, for starter, businesses can actually pay $2 per day or more. With the Plus, it's roughly about $100 per day at a minimum. So Plus offers live support where starter packages do not. Advertisers can actually set up budget caps as well as with AdWords itself. It's not terribly inexpensive. I actually said that. Inexpensive. But at the same time, if you're meeting your audience where they are inside of the local space, could very well be a great play for that local brand.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of people who are trying to drive retail visits, that sort of thing, and they're always trying to figure out how can you track if somebody on AdWords actually comes to your store. And it's like, do you use coupon codes? Do you use something else? Which can be a great way to do it, but it can also be really difficult and really hairy and kind of have a little bit of fuzz when it comes to your numbers, that sort of thing. But I feel like this would be a little bit more actionable, especially for those local businesses. It makes it a little bit easier if somebody's driving right down your street. They're going to be driving right past you. Why not pop up something or have it kind of call out that, hey, I'm over here? Because not everybody's going to be looking at storefronts when they're driving down the road.
That's right. It's the digital billboard that we're experiencing now.
Yes, pretty much.
Right to your smartphone. I tell you what, I mean, boy, in-car GPS really took a hit whenever the smartphones.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's like little or no space for that. I mean, their GPS is constantly improving, but with the ad space and the personal connection that you have with your smartphone, wow. What an industry changer. All right, so from Search Engine Journal, Matt Southern brings us some new awareness to Bing. They're actually introducing price extensions. Way to go, Bing.
Catching up.
Yeah, catching up. Only 3.5 years. So Bing has actually launched a new feature that will allow users to add price extensions to search ads. Price extensions let the advertisers more effectively showcase products or services with clicks, leading to a sales page on their own website or a third-party storefront. And there you can see some of the extension demonstration right there. It's more of a call out as opposed to only 3.5.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's more of a call out with those extensions in place there, and they're currently available in the U.S. Will roll out internationally this month to all countries except for China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. I wonder why.
I don't know.
Don't they have a yen to be
You think?
having an extension? No.
No.
That's probably definitely it. Just the currency, probably.
And I wanted to make sure that laugh track was just me pulling up the Periscope feed. So it was not something I meant to. Apparently, when you pull it up, it is not muted.
See?
So now
for
it
everybody
comes
who's
muted.
watching us live, hey, we're on Periscope today, trying out some different deliveries. So for our audio listeners, post-show, jump into the live cast and contribute. We certainly want to interact with you and answer some questions that you have as we're doing the show, because you know what? We can do that. We have the technology. So any thoughts about Bing's delivery of extensions and such a distant forerunner of Google? What's your thoughts there, Michelle?
Sure. No, I'm happy that they've got them active. I see them work pretty well for some of the accounts that I work on. It's nice to be able to compete with your price without having to take up those precious characters in your ad copy that we're always coveting so much.
Yep.
So that's pretty great. I think that Bing is doing and has been doing a fantastic job of keeping up with, for the most part, Google.
Right.
They do a good job. They might bring stuff in afterward, but in some instances, there have been some rollouts that Bing has that they've already gone through all of the issues and heard all the issues that Google had, so it makes it a little bit easier, and they launch it right the first time. So I can only applaud Bing to continue innovating and adding new stuff to the platform.
And yeah, the more and more there's standardization between two platforms, the more and more we're going to use it, because on top of it, they're a heck of a lot cheaper than the ad space on Google. So
That's one of their big drivers, is being able to have parity between the two, because if you can build it in Google, you can port it to Bing. The more people will get on the platform, the better off they'll be.
and make it very, very easy to do that as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
Excellent. You know what's also easy? Signing up for the newsletter. How about that for a segue? I love it.
Very good.
Like you've been doing this for 261 episodes.
Nice. Couldn't let me have the win, could you? So, hey, every week we're actually packaging what we've done over the show and some of the news that we're bringing together each and every week, as well as who we're going to be talking to and some of the insights that we have. So sign up for the newsletter, free of charge. We'll not use your email for anything else but bringing you these digital nuggets of gold. Digital, not real nuggets. We wouldn't be able to afford that. But
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Can't
We're emailing
afford that
Bitcoin.
either.
We're emailing Bitcoin.
Blockchain.
If you can afford that, that's great.
There we go. So go over to edgeofthewebradio.com, and right at the top of the header, or how about just the header? You can actually jump in there and put your email in, sign up right then and there. You can also text to the number 22828 when you're not driving, please. The word Edge Talk, and you can sign up right then and there. Just get on the subscription. We would appreciate you, and we certainly want to hear from all of our audience and our fan base to make sure that we are bringing you what you're wanting to see, not only on the newsletter but also on the show. So with that, let's make sure you follow all the trending topics over at Edge of the Web Radio. But let's do a deep dive with this week's featured guest.
Now it's time for Edge of the Web featured interview with Michelle Morgan.
There was your deep voice guy right there.
I was going to say, that was pretty intense. That's the most intense intro I've ever had. I need to borrow that whenever I go on stage somewhere.
Yeah, we're really thinking of trying to give our guests some ringtones that they can use. But
that'd be great. I don't think it should say this is Michelle Morgan when my phone rings, though. That'd be weird.
just distribute that for everybody
Give it
else.
to everybody else.
Problem is that licensing would kill us. So we'll introduce you.
Wasn't
here.
there like at one point, didn't like Verizon or somebody did like before somebody picked up, there was an audio, like a song or something would play? Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
Interesting. No.
Yeah.
I know that now when my dad's phone rings, it will literally say who's calling if it's in his contacts, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very weird, and it kind of catches me off guard. I don't like it.
No. We don't want that. We want our ringtone
Yes.
so we can control it, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So for all of our guests, our listeners, as well as our feed watchers, hey, let's introduce you to our guest today. Michelle Morgan is the Director of Client Services at Clix Marketing. She got her start in PPC at 2010 and joined up with Clix Marketing a couple years later. Michelle's a contributor to Search Engine Journal. Fantastic. As well as Social Media Examiner. Gotta
Also
love
fantastic.
that. Absolutely. And has spoken at SMX West and will be actually speaking at the HeroConf next week.
Yes,
Cool. So, Michelle, why don't you give us your backstory? That's a 30,000-foot flyby. Give us some understanding of why you got into the paid space in digital marketing.
Yeah, so I have the benefit of saying that basically I just stumbled into why I am in the paid space right out of college, just like everybody else, and needed a job. So at a local company, they had an ad for online marketing assistant. I had just gotten my degree in marketing. I thought everybody uses computers. That's got to make sense.
Cool.
So applied for the job, and luckily got the job. First day, I was an AdWords editor, just starting to do stuff. So from day one, have been PPC all the way through.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So pretty interesting.
It is, yeah. A lot of us old timers literally got into PPC after we were doing a number of other digital marketing tactics, specifically SEO, right?
Yeah.
And there's a huge corollary of analytical perspective from SEO to SEM. But have you diverged at all? Have you explored other disciplines, or you stayed in that pocket?
So I have looked into some of them over time, and part of the reason when I made the jump from in-house to agencies, when I made the jump to Clix, I was looking to kind of diversify what I was doing because I was just at an in-house company advertising the same thing all the time, and I wanted a little bit of a challenge. So I thought maybe I wanted to branch out into different areas, different disciplines, and then kind of as I thought about it, I realized that I really like the paid space. I like the challenge, but I'm also somebody who I like being able to get my data right now.
Yep.
So I like being able to do that. I just needed a little bit more of a diverse challenge on a day-to-day basis. So made the jump there. But we do a lot of work with a number of the companies we work with. We will help with some of the conversion rate optimization, whether it's landing page testing, that sort of thing. We also have gotten very much into assisting in optimizing the lead funnel, if you will. Ooh. So after kind of somebody converts on the website, how do you then continue to market to them so they go from lead to MQL to opt to customer? Because that kind of stuff is what we end up being measured on.
Yep.
But nobody thinks about it in the initial stages. They think, what's my cost per lead? And then they don't think about cost per customer.
Fantastic. So you're really diving into the ROI side of things with a heck of a lot more metrics. If you'd indulge me, a gratuitous plug for our title sponsor. Site Strategics is actually a proud title sponsor of Edge of the Web. I wanted to share with its listeners a special offer. So we here at Site Strategics are doing digital marketing strategies for our clients regularly, and it goes without saying that we are constantly asked about the question of return on investment. I mean, that's truly what you should be focused on. So would you like to discover what your marketing ROI is? Why not have a second opinion to check out how your investment and how it is actually paying off for your bottom line? So we're actually offering a 30% discount on our digital marketing ROI report. We learn your digital strengths, your weaknesses, and threats. The ROI report delivers a comprehensive image of your existing performance in areas of SEO, content marketing, social media, SEO, and SEM, while allowing Site Strategics the team to be able to provide a full insight into areas of opportunity and growth. So you'll get SEO audit, social media review, paid review, conversion analysis, competitor analysis, which is very, very cool, as well as gap analysis between. So go over to the URL offer.sitestrategics.com/edge. That's offer.sitestrategics.com/edge. Sign up real quick there and just let's get the conversation talking. It may be a really good fit for you to be able to have this second opinion. Hey, you go to the doctor for a second opinion. Why trust your digital marketing with just one marketer, right?
That's right. And I forgot to update the script there, Aaron, but if you can't remember that URL, edgeofthewebradio.com/ROI.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
So that'll redirect to it. So just /ROI on our website. So
/ROI, and you'll get there as well.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All right. Thanks for allowing us to take up the lane there.
Absolutely.
Getting back over to ROI, but it was a good jump. I had to get into the ROI.
I was trying to give you a good segue.
I appreciate that,
absolutely.
Michelle. So in that space, it's a tough discussion whenever you're talking return on investment after lead generation, after getting that lead into the space, because that's where a lot of marketers will tread lightly from a cost per acquisition standpoint. But you're talking about truly sales process. You're giving some introspection into clients and how they are actually processing their leads. How often are they stopping at just the email response and never thinking about follow-up communication or any type of additional branding to be able to build up that equity that they already have?
Sure. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times people are very lead hungry, and then needing to do that follow-up like you talked about afterwards. So it seems like almost everybody has some form of an email process, but they also have what tends to be too quick of a sales team follow-up.
Yep.
Somebody will download a white paper and then they'll get a phone call from your company. It's like, I just downloaded an informational white paper. This is way too much right off the bat. You know, it's like asking to get married on the first date, which is the polite way of saying the metaphor I've heard of before.
Too soon.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, one of the things that we don't specifically do the back end piece of it, but we have seen enough things go wrong in the past to help kind of coach that sort of thing.
Right.
And talking about kind of encouraging clients to use lead scoring, not only if somebody comes through and they actually fill out a form, but then do they come back to your site? Do they download something else? Do they fill out a second form for a more robust call to action? Like maybe they first download a white paper, but then send them remarketing ads to ask them for a demo, which everybody loves, or like a free trial, or talk to a sales rep, something like that. Having more of a follow-up, because like I said, anybody can generate leads all day pretty much. It depends on if they're good quality. It depends on if they actually make their way through the sales funnel and actually get through to that ROI piece of it.
You know, we've talked on the show so many years about buyer's journey, and that buyer's journey has a particular temperature to it. It's not just research. It's not just where they are in the awareness, consideration, and decision stage. Right. It's also when they want to be talked to, when they want to be communicated to. And on top of that, what their preferred method of communication is, right? So you've got the maturation of the digital marketing space, where we're actually finally learning our role as it comes down to inbound and processing leads and even proffering up to the client lead scoring. But the clients are now figuring out that they have a job to do as well.
Yes.
And they can really screw up the relationship way too early if they don't mature and get themselves disciplined, and because the salesperson is going to say, oh my gosh, it just came. We just had a lead come through over the weekend or today regarding we have a score your site functionality on our SEO page, right? Sure. And part of that is making sure that we back off and then connect in about a week. Or because we're giving some great data for them to be able to analyze their content or their page submission, but they're not interested in us. They were interested in the tool that we were offering.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and just utilizing a free tool as a call to action is wonderful. But then treat that person, it's the golden rule, right? Treat that person like you would like to be treated. Just because you went and you used the blood pressure machine at your local drugstore doesn't mean that you want somebody coming at you with like blood pressure medication all the time. You know what I mean? Like that's funny. That's not what you want to have. So you wouldn't want to treat somebody that way, because I will also say that the way that you do your marketing nowadays not only impacts what your ad costs are, how many leads you get, all that kind of stuff. If you're not keenly aware that everything that you do, every touch you have with marketing is a reflection of your brand, you're really missing out, because people don't realize that I can serve Facebook ads to people all day, but if you give them too many ads, they get really frustrated. And even if it's the right person, they're going to be turned off on your brand because you have just bothered them so much, and you've made advertising inherently, in my mind, should be helpful, and it should be something that people don't necessarily notice. Like, yes, it's going to have bigger calls to action, that sort of thing, but you should be targeting the right people who would be interested in it. So when you offer a runner, do you want $10 off a pair of Nike shoes?
Right.
they'll probably notice that it's an ad, but
Right.
it's like, at least it's relevant to them.
Right.
And if you start bombarding people, you're going to make them more aware of advertising, and then you're only going to have more backlash about advertising online
Right.
in the rest of society, which already isn't great. They don't think that we're great people.
However, they like it whenever their content, they like it whenever the content's there, whenever they're ready for it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So unfortunately, we don't have the metrics or the tool sets to be able to gauge that need, right? All you can do is be able to position it in a way that the message is soft enough at those touches. We used to call them table touches back in the food and beverage days, right?
Sure.
Is that you're at the restaurant and you've ordered and the waiter or waitress has taken everything, and then the manager comes around. Only after everything is settled on the table is that all of a sudden a conversation has been able to happen and people are more comfortable. They're not waiting on things to come to them. Then they can come around. How was your experience here? Right.
Sure.
That has a particular sensitivity. You got to be wired. You don't rush up and see how everything's going because you're going to be more annoyed than anything
Yes.
else, right?
Yeah.
So that's a natural discipline inside of food and beverage that they've been doing for eons. Why aren't marketers and more especially the corporate organizations that have internal marketing folk, why aren't they more aligned with that type of personalization and also understanding of timing? Is this just the new discipline that we have to get into, or is there something else that's preventing us from understanding that?
I feel like right now we're at a point where we have more data than we ever have before, which is going to be really crucial when it comes down to that. It's hard to be able to, it's hard to know when somebody is ready for that touch if you can't see them.
Right.
And that's part of the problem is, like, in a restaurant you can see physically if somebody is ready for it, but on the web you can't. So it's something where we have to generate tools and basically have cues from other people to know when they are and aren't ready, that sort of thing. I think I don't think that the technology is quite as advanced as it could be and will be. I think it'll only continue to get better. It's much better than it was even when I started out in the field, to be quite honest.
Sure.
And I think it'll only continue to get better for us to be able to interpret those signals. I also think part of it is, for better or worse, folks have really aggressive sales goals, leads goals, ROI goals, all this kind of stuff. And in some ways, nobody wants to wait for the returns to come. Like, when it comes down to it, I'm all for putting as much out in the field as we can, but in the long run, it has a potential to have a negative impact if you bombard stuff to hit your Q1 goal, and then in Q4,
You're really tanking yourself.
Exactly.
So you're talking about patience, and salespeople are, by and large, and no offense to the sales team here at Site Strategics, but by and large, I mean, there's a lack of patience in the sales environment because they have those goals that they have to meet.
Sure.
But from a digital marketing standpoint, the geek in me is looking at this going, okay, you've got a bunch of chess pieces. And if you put your content, structure your content and the positioning of your content, not only on the website, but also the content that you're moving into the different respective ecosystems, you still have the ability to tag that user and then watch that user's behavior in those different spaces.
Absolutely.
So as that user comes to digest their white paper PDF, right? You can do a conditional set of arguments around, I mean, just the process flow of lead management is that if they've hit this and they have not hit this particular pricing page, which is probably the easiest connection that you can make here, if they're checking out a particular piece of content and they go into the consideration space to find out more about you as an organization, there's a positive lead scoring point, but if they're not circling around that particular section, don't touch them and insist upon your salespeople. As much as it looks like they're apt, if they haven't set that next tripwire, don't go after them. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's one of those things that if you're doing, like, everybody loves to do search because it's bottom of funnel, right?
Right. It's intent.
It's intent driven. Somebody has a problem right now. They're searching for something right now. So the idea of being able to capture all of the bottom funnel, absolutely. Set that structure up, have that in place to be able to catch that. Somebody comes in, they fill out your form, good to go.
Yep.
But even just the idea of, like, what you were alluding to, it's like if somebody has done one action, but they haven't quite gotten to a point where they should be talking to a sales rep yet, you've got to find a way to kind of coax them that way. But one of the other things is that if you continue to add things to the top of the funnel, people will slowly wean themselves down to get to that stage. So then your sales team is always just going through the next one that's there.
Right.
So to be able to have a bottom of funnel, you have to fill the top of the funnel or else nobody is there. So if people want to drive volume on search, you can add as many keywords until you're blue in the face. You might not get any more volume out of it. You need to start advertising to people top of funnel and introducing them to who you are, what you do, that sort of thing, so that you will then eventually drive the intent that comes with search. Which again, patience game.
Patience game, and it's a discipline. You literally have to build. On top of that, it's a more mature way of thinking. Is that you have to have that relationship, and you have to build that structure further and further up. So the content that you're giving at that initial awareness level, it cannot be salesy. It's got to be bereft of a hard push towards that next stage. It's got to be good informational content that is helping advocate on behalf of the consumer so they can actually make a better decision whenever they are in the decision phase. Right?
Yeah.
Well, remarketing is a huge factor in all of this.
Love remarketing.
Oh, and it's also very, very, from all the different marketing tactics, it's one of the highest yielding.
Yes.
From what we're talking about. But on top of it, just the ability to position different points of content along their consumer path, right?
Yes.
So earlier this year, you wrote an article on Search Engine Journal talking about audience targeting and PPC.
Yes.
Explain what that is to our audience.
So just audience targeting in general?
Yep.
So being able to take an audience that you have accrued through your retargeting pixel, basically, when somebody has come to your site, if they hit a certain page, like you were talking about, there you can set up some conditional rules that says if somebody hits a /pricing page, you can create a rule that will put everybody who has hit that page into a group of folks who you can then target separately. It's basically, they might still be searching for something, but you can see them different from everybody else because you've added in a layer on top of it. So the idea is basically to find meaningful segments within the people who are already coming to your website. Because one of the things that I always harp on is if you're trying to sell to somebody and they go to your careers page, they're probably not buying from you because they actually would like a job to work with you.
Right.
So that's probably, I mean, they need to talk to HR. They don't need to talk to sales.
Right.
So you would treat somebody who comes to a careers page different than somebody who goes to a pricing page. On almost every site, a pricing page should be a very high intent page. But if somebody comes to maybe a different features page, or if you're selling, let's say you're a major retailer, you're selling shoes and T-shirts, something like that.
Yep.
You want to remarket to somebody what they were looking at. You don't, I mean, you might be able to upsell somebody on some shirts if they were looking at shoes, but if they haven't bought the shoes yet, you should probably focus on that. That's probably a higher ticket item anyway. So being able to find meaningful differences in your audiences to be able to speak to them differently and like we were talking about, the way that they should be spoken to based on the intent signals they've given you.
Yep. So there's great technology to be able to deliver this, and let's break down some of the ways that you can use audience technology or audience targeting. First is remarketing lists for search ads.
Yes.
Right. So how do you create a remarketing list, and what can you do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you open like an AdWords account, there are a couple of pixels that you should use on your site. You should use the conversion tracking, and that goes on just specific pages.
Yep.
But then you should use the remarketing pixel, which goes on every single page of your site in the same way that if you use Google Analytics, which I highly encourage you to do, that also goes on every single page of your website. What you're then able to do is to write conditional rules in the audiences section. I would be able to tell you how to get there, but now there are two interfaces and they're just all over the place.
Yeah. We'll get there in a second.
Yeah, sounds good. And then just create those meaningful rules using and or logic that is in there. If you don't know what those are, you can look them up. I won't dive into them now. But once you create those audiences, they will accrue users, and you'll be able to see like a user count within those, so you can see how many people are in them. You have to meet a certain minimum, and I want to say it's like 300 to 1,000 users have to be minimum in a list to be able to target it just for privacy purposes. But then what you would do is for remarketing lists for search ads or RLSA, you would go in and you can use it in a couple different ways. You can either add that audience to your existing search campaigns, which then will let you see the data for new users versus that returning list of users, so you can see how new and returning people perform differently. Or you can set up a completely new campaign for them and have them be separated. So not only can you pull the levers that come with the audience layers, which are usually just bid modifiers, you can do some more advanced ad customizers based on the audience members, that sort of thing.
Right.
But you can also then utilize all of the different levers that are at the campaign level, which is where most of the gold nuggets are to be able to manage your campaigns.
Right.
So it depends more on volume. If you've got low volume, maybe just use RLSA on your existing search campaigns. But if you've got higher volume, it might make sense, which in a number of my accounts we do. We just have a separate set of campaigns that are just RLSA because we can speak to those people differently. We can offer them something different and be able to manage those campaigns separately from the net new users who are still trying to introduce them to the brand.
So I mean, really, it's contingent on what you're selling as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, you've got the visitors, then you have the segmentation of professional services, or if you're selling widgets, you've got, you could literally have RLSA campaigns for product types across the board, and that's where you can get more and more nuance, and then you have different ad groups within those campaigns, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can jump down a massive rabbit hole with RLSA. The biggest hurdle when it comes down to it is just volume. You've got to be able to have enough volume to justify the time, but
be able to break it out.
Exactly, but you can have a lot of really cool granular strategies if you treat your RLSA with the respect it deserves.
Ah, see? There's the quote for the show. Hey, so next is RLSA with dynamic search ads.
Yes.
All right. So unpack that for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So dynamic search ads are kind of a little favorite project of mine. I love dynamic search ads. I've spoken on them a number of times. I've written about them quite a bit. Basically, dynamic search ads, if you don't know what they are, instead of providing Google and Bing with keywords for your search campaigns, you basically provide them with your website or certain pages of your website. And then in the same way that if you've ever used the Google Keyword Planner and you put in a web page and it gives you keyword suggestions, that same type of tech, not exactly that tech, but the same type, will help discover search queries for you to advertise on. So you utilize a web page as opposed to a keyword, and then the theory there is basically that it will go out and find additional searches that you didn't know that you were qualified for because you didn't have them in your keyword set. Theoretically, DSA should not cannibalize your search campaigns, and I need to say that, but it does. So add all of your current keywords as negatives to your DSA, and then you'll get only net new queries because I do see it cannibalize some stuff from time to time.
Yeah.
But the idea of our DSA, basically remarketing with DSA, is that if somebody has already been to your site before, they are familiar with you enough that almost if they search for anything on your website, you want them to come back to it.
Right.
So DSA gives you the flexibility in letting you target just about anything that somebody could search for based on your website content, but only within a specific group of people who's already been introduced to you.
Already qualified.
So it's like going to a party that is just a broader audience than you would have thought, like a bigger gala, but certain people. Phone fell on the floor.
That's all right.
But certain people, so you might be able to have a softer introduction to them the second time around.
And on top of this, to follow the same analogy, is that you're at a party and I didn't know you did that too.
Right.
So you're having
exactly.
that expansion of additional information, and you're already qualified with the people that have already vested time with you to begin with.
Yes.
Fantastic. Love this stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is deep geek, and we really appreciate the time unpacking this. We're going to have a number of links to Michelle's articles online because you do even deeper dive into that.
I am quite a nerdy writer when it comes down to it. I have very nitty gritty stuff, so that if you like the how-tos and the walkthroughs, that's typically what I do.
But that actually is very important because there's so many authors and individuals on these different news organizations and trade organizations that don't take the time to actually go deeper in, because that's what new audiences in digital marketing, as well as people that are trying to keep their freshness and their powder dry, right? Yep. They want to know the level of depth, and you can certainly see differences of contributors that just don't want to take the time to be able to explain it, or maybe can't. There's always that
too. I'll always just say that they don't want to, but I feel like that was always one of the things.
You're too nice.
I try to be. That was always one of the things that kind of frustrated me. I love a good keynote style article or even a keynote address that kind of inspires you to do new things and to test new things out, and that's great. But if you're taking the time to read industry blogs, I might start off with an idea like RDSA. I know that at one point people didn't know what that was. They didn't use it. It wasn't very common. Maybe just a handful of people did it. But you can write an article about here's why you should do this. But then if you don't tell the how, then you're not going to be able to capitalize on it. And then it's going to feel like a useless article.
Kind of assuming that, oh, yeah, you'll know exactly how to do it.
Exactly.
You know, if you're wanting to make use of this information, give some guidelines, you know, or give them a rail that they can hold on to.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Give some sort of guidance.
That's the difference between educating and capitalizing on a trending topic.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah.
So another key concept that you offered in the article was the audience targeting and our audience exclusions.
Yes.
So for those advertisers, the SEM advertisers out there, they may very well know a good deal about the audience targeting. And on top of it, we're finally able to see so much standardization between YouTube and Google AdWords. But let's talk about exclusions for a second. Could you share a couple of scenarios and where that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a number of ways. It's kind of the whole idea. If you do persona audiences, or if you've done that exercise, during that exercise, you probably also thought about some things that you would want to exclude because you thought, well, should we test this? No, we don't want those people specifically. So there are a couple ways that you can exclude people. One of the ones that I talked about earlier, if somebody comes to your careers page, they're probably not going to want to buy from you. So that's one instance. One of the fun ones that's on Facebook that I like quite a bit, if you've ever used lead ads, the ones where they pop up right in the feed and you don't even have to leave the page, Facebook will add in, they already have a pre-built audience if you use lead ads that said somebody opened this lead ad but did not fill it out. I don't know of a lower friction conversion action than a Facebook lead ad anywhere on the web. So if they're not willing to fill that out, they're probably not willing to buy right now.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, even just a very simple one, if somebody has already filled out your form on the site and your ad is only going to ask them to fill it out again, exclude them. There's no reason to do the same thing. If the only thing you have to offer to people is a demo, exactly. If the only thing you have to offer to somebody is a demo, then if they've already filled out the demo, you should stop advertising to them because you're only just going to be paying more money for the same eyeballs, and they're probably not going to fill out the form twice anyway.
Nope. All right. Well, that in its own right, that's a whole nother. That's a whole nother conversation in audience exclusion. But it also gets back to you got to have the volume to be able to do this, right?
Yep.
And you also have to have you have to have the scientific structure of how you're going to measure it. And then and let's go back to 30,000 foot level for a second. Is that all this is precipitated by working through a set of logical experiments before anything else. You just can't do an audience exclusion if you don't have knowledge of the audiences, one, that you're trying to actually bring in, but on top of it, you don't have the wherewithal to be able to look at the ads and what would be the definable fork in the road.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that is more constraining to a marketing campaign that I think people give credit for is the resources you have to put behind it. Like that one call to action scenario. If that's all you've got, that's going to be an issue.
Yep.
You need to be able to take stock honestly where you stand, what assets you have, what time you have available to do new things, put new tools together, put new resources together, that sort of thing. And then to be able to craft an advertising strategy around those pieces that you have as opposed to trying to make a square peg fit in a round hole or vice versa.
Yeah, because you could have erroneous testing or erroneous data if you don't.
Exactly.
Yep. Excellent. Similar audiences for search was another factor, and this is really cool because this actually gives environments in which you hadn't thoroughly thought through all of the different potential audiences, but you have this tangential recommendation.
Exactly.
So unpack that for a second for us.
Yeah, so similar audiences, this is another reason that having meaningful retargeting lists or remarketing lists, I use those words interchangeably, why it's important to have those be segmented in a meaningful way. For Google, if you create a list of retargeting audiences, they will continuously analyze those lists of folks and look to identify different patterns within them. If Google can identify a pattern within an individual list, it will generate what they call a similar audience for you. Basically, a bunch of people on Google that are not part of the original route list, so it's not the same people again, but that behave similarly based on their searches, where they browse, their demographics, all sorts of information of people that behave similarly on Google to the people that you have in a list. So one of the things that you have to think about on that with the kind of the size requirement is that you can make a list that is too small, so you can't generate a profile, but also think about a crowd of people at a basketball game. that crowd of people, the only thing you can probably discern about those people is that they all like basketball.
Right.
That's probably it. So if you have lists that are too big, like everybody who goes to your website, Google will not generate a similar audience if it can't discern a pattern. So either your audience is too small and they can't find a pattern, or your audience is too big and it basically looks like the entire internet to them and they can't find a meaningful pattern. So you need to be able to have very meaningful retargeting lists to be able to leverage similar audiences, which then the functionality of them, you can use them in much the same way that you can remarketing lists. You can layer them on top of your existing search. You can have a separated campaign for search. You can target them on the Google Display Network. You can do all sorts of stuff with similar audiences.
Doesn't that necessitate almost like a rebuild of the site to a particular degree?
Not necessarily. It could, though.
Well, follow me here, is that if you're really trying to understand and define a particular audience to begin with, is that maybe not redesign. That's a wrong concept. Building new structure in your site that is directly applicable to the target market that you're trying to go after, and more nuanced, more at least that sets up the experiment, right? That Google will actually read, as opposed to if you don't have audience-oriented content and it's all service-oriented and it really doesn't explore the type of audience you're trying to market to. You can't really steer it without that content on your website, right?
Sure. Yeah. In the way that you would need to, like if somebody goes to a pricing page, like if somebody is a high intent pricing page type visitor, then yes, you would need to have that separate site for it. Some websites nowadays have just the homepage is the whole thing, and if you click on part of it, it's just got anchor text someplace else. That's not really going to work for this. Nope. So yeah, I follow what you're saying now. That makes total sense to me.
So you start logically planting that structure that would at least give you a feedback loop to be able to see if you can find other audiences out there. Cool. Last final way that we can leverage audiences in PPC is the in-market audience. All right. What are those and why are they only available on the Google Display Network?
Yes. So in-market audiences, in the way that similar audiences are a list that Google provides to you based on your existing lists, what in-market audiences are publicly available, and they are just lists of people who Google has deemed are in the market to make a purchase of a service or a product, and then they put together a preset list of those products and services, that sort of stuff. So we have a client that does travel. So we use a number of the in-market lists to layer into some of our display that's people looking to take a trip to Morocco or take a trip to Chile or something like that.
Right.
It's effectively just a preset list that you can tap into because of the signals that they have given Google. You can only use it on the display network because if you get too much into search, that kind of thing, they just don't let you do it because of privacy issues, that sort of thing.
Right.
But it can be a great tool for expanding into, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, filling the top of the funnel with the right type of people who just might not know who you are yet, and then being able to bring those folks to your site and then build a retargeting audience off of it. If you want to.
They're prepackaged at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much. So it's just a list of users that's out there. You can target the same list I can. It's got the same number of people in it. They're constantly adding people here and there based on their behaviors and if time lapses, that kind of stuff. But yeah.
There's a plethora of good ideas just in that article itself, and obviously you're proficient in the PPC standpoint. I do want to jump into a bit more of a topical conversation here with you real quick, and that is in regards to the Facebook fiasco that we have here with Facebook and the privatization of data, and on top of that, the 87 million users that evidently had their data scraped and sold for marketing purposes and political marketing purposes at that. There is a unique moment right now where we're talking about audiences, the digital marketing audience that we all are participant of, right? And there's 220 million people on Facebook out of 330 million in the country. We have adopted and acclimated as a people to advertising, okay? Yes. And it seems a bit like the horse has left the barn already, that people are up in arms that this data is getting utilized for marketing purposes. Right. It seems a little bit... not naive. I think there's a lot of bluster here. Everybody knows. Maybe I'm kind of putting myself into the equation a little bit. They know how useful the marketing is because of the online purchases year over year over year. Okay. What's about to happen? Can you give some opinion on what's about to happen in a reaction mode for the country as a whole, looking at the data that Facebook is shopping or has been, and what the potential reaction would be from the public, and how that's going to affect Facebook?
Sure. So that is a very packed question.
I know. Take a piece, any piece.
Hard hitters right now. I think that it's one of those things where people are paying quite a bit of attention to it because of the political environment that we live in, and the data breach happened around politics. So I think that didn't help. If it had happened because a brand sold too many shoes, it wouldn't be nearly as charged as it currently is, my opinion. But I think that the fact that there's being light shed on what data gets utilized for advertising and people are paying more attention to it. I agree that I think that people had to understand that for a platform like Facebook to be free, there had to be some utilization of your information, because they're not just putting it out there for public service. Like, they have to make money.
Right.
But I think that right now there's a backlash on it. I think over time that will fade in terms of people being upset that Facebook is using their information. Because like I said earlier, good marketing should be done based on the information you have, and it should be helpful. If you don't like horses for whatever reason, you don't want to be advertised as anything that has to do with horses, know, for good or bad. And I think that people will get used to it in a little bit, but I think the fact that we are paying so much attention to all the politics around it, I think is only supercharging everything that has to do with Facebook. So, I mean, I think in the long run, I think it will help Facebook. Right now, I can tell you it is a crunch for marketers, and I am constantly asking or answering questions about the same sort of thing to a lot of my clients, that sort of thing, what's going to happen. But I think when it comes down to it, I have a hard time thinking that many people are going to bail on Facebook to a point where it won't still be beneficial for advertisers, even if they take away some of the tools that we have.
And so we were talking before the show about some of the tools and some of the demographics not being available from Facebook.
Yes.
With a potential change here. We don't know what's going to happen during these congressional hearings. This is a quintessential moment for online advertising, is it not?
Yes.
So, I mean, Amazon's been in that space, marketing its products, but there was a known commerce factor to that. You were selling widgets, you were buying widgets, you were interested in widgets. With advertising, advertising that's directed towards cause, intent, interest levels, these things are a good deal more ethereal, and they're also a good deal more personal.
Yes.
Right?
I think that's the biggest piece.
And that is the biggest piece. So do you see Facebook kind of pulling some of that data back and not allowing advertisers to be able to do what they were doing before?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they're already doing it. One of the biggest things that I was a huge proponent of, and I talked about a lot, and I quite frankly used it a lot. I did practice what I preached on this one. The Facebook Audience Insights tool was a fantastic tool that was available. You could upload a list of users, your customer base, and Facebook would basically tell you, here's where these people kind of fit into our standard basic targeting options: age, gender, education level, marriage or relationship status, that kind of thing.
Right.
And that was wonderful to be able to, going back to that retargeting audience stuff that we just talked about, you could upload a list of people who had been to your site and never purchased, and a list of people who had been to your site and had purchased, to be able to understand who the core audience was that was always going to see your stuff, who's in both, but then who is more apt to be in the non-purchaser, who's going to be more of a window shopper, and then who's going to be in the core audience that does purchase, who's actually going to give you money. That was something that I think was hugely important to advertisers that, quite frankly, they didn't leverage it as much as I wish they would have while it was around, and now it's been taken away. My guess is that piece will, my hope is, I should say, that piece will come back. I think we will start to get more data back. One of the biggest issues I think they're having is with some of the third-party advertisers or third-party data sources and tying that all in. So I think that over time, hopefully, they will find a way to be able to give us that data again, get rid of the the very specific niche problem that they had with that audience insights tool, which I won't go into here, and be able to still let us understand our audience a bit better, but not quite at the level that we could before.
No, well said. And that kind of how you paint the picture was literally there's so much value in the AI that they have and the tools that they've been able to develop. It honestly is a shame that I'll show my cards. I think it's a shame that because of the public's naivete of the industry. And we've talked about this for years regarding having to educate Congress about the interwebs and the tubes that connect the internet
the vacuum
together.
tubes.
I mean, they're politicians. They're not knowledgeable in that space, and now there's a public sway that really is even more uneducated, for lack of a better description.
Right. I think that that's definitely true. I have a lot of family members that a lot of times I have to kind of argue the case that I don't know, I guess they're my family members. I know where you live, but it's because we're family members.
Right.
Like, it's not because I can't go in. If you click on it and come to our website, I could probably back end around a way to figure out where you are.
Right.
But I could do that even not as an advertiser.
Yes.
And even as an advertiser, it takes a lot of work to do that, to be able to actually invade someone's privacy that much. I don't have the time to do it.
Right.
I don't know anybody who has time to do it, but I know that somebody who does have the time to do it will do it no matter what.
Right.
Because they want to, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to do it whether the advertising tools are out there. I understand taking it away to make it a little bit harder, but I don't think any of that kind of stuff is... I do think that it is a misunderstanding of what type of information we get when it comes down to what advertisers can do, what we understand about people, that sort of thing. I think people think that we can see into their homes, and I cannot.
We used to. We had some.
I didn't do that.
We had some tricks way back in the way.
Hey, I wanted to jump in real quick. Michelle, you mentioned earlier, a couple minutes ago about how somebody were to fill out a form on your website, and then you can upload their information into Facebook and be able to target them. How does Facebook know that's who it is? So say John Smith, his name's John Smith, filled out a form on your website. How do they know the John Smith you uploaded, his contact information about, is the John Smith that his Facebook information?
Who's speaking? I can't see you over there.
Oh, sorry.
It's a ghost.
There he is.
There we go. Much better. Okay, back to
How does
me.
that work?
I'm just kidding. No,
Well done.
Right, yeah, I try. No, so the way that they will do that is you will provide not only their name, but you will provide what other information they gave to you. So in a lot of those forms, you will ask for name, email, phone number, that sort of thing. That's kind of the standard set of characters that you would ask for. And you will upload all of that into Facebook. The most common way to do the customer match, and the way that we've done it most often in the past, is by email address, because you have to have an email address to be able to log into Facebook.
Right.
So they more often than not use email address. They've gotten more sophisticated, and you can now use name, email, phone number, city, state, zip, couple other things.
Just for all the cross-referencing, so you can get more and more accurate.
Exactly. So
Got
if
it.
you don't have somebody's email, you can give first name, last name, phone number, city, and they'll triangulate and they'll figure out pretty much what should be the person that they were trying to find. And all of that information, if you'll think about it, name, email, phone number, usually address, city, state, all that kind of stuff, that's what you provide to Facebook. So it's all based on information that you give to Facebook. I think some of it, like location-wise, they might be able to figure stuff out, like where you use the app. But your name, Facebook's not going to figure that out on its own, and they didn't create an email address for you. So it's all information that you provided to Facebook. So that's how we can.
Well, that X
match
factor is the uniqueness of the name, because I mean, I'm sure there's there's a few hundred John Smiths down in our
good
I was going
neighborhood.
to say Aaron Sparks. How do you get the right Aaron?
Right. Well, first and foremost, you don't look for the girls, right?
But I went more political correct.
Here's a perfect example. I get Miss Aaron Sparks as mailing all the time. That my wife literally had to tell people that she's my life partner to be able to make some decisions and push back on some bills. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's fallible data, obviously. But again, it's it's still more dialed in, and we're getting more, and we're feeding the AI engine as well. And that AI factor across the board is getting better and better to be able to discern as we give it more factors to be able to understand.
Yeah, Facebook's algorithm is probably one of the better ones that is out there, in my opinion, that is on a self-serve platform that is available to just about anybody to use.
Yep.
If in the same vein of similar audiences for Google, Facebook has lookalike audiences, so you can do the same type of thing on Facebook. Instead of Facebook finding patterns for you and only giving you an audience when you want it, you can tell Facebook to make a lookalike audience, and it will give you a percentage of the population model that behaves the way yours does.
Wow.
So you can get a little bit finicky with it, but basically if you do a 1% piece, since there are 220 million right there about, a 1% lookalike off of just about any list of users in the United States will be about 2.1 million people is usually what you end up getting. So they'll put together a list of that, but then on top of that, I've talked to a number of different advertisers. I'm in the same boat. Almost none of us do any type of manual bidding on Facebook anymore because the algorithm is so good. You can put in some restrictions, that sort of thing, and you might want to do a little bit of testing around it, but when it comes down to it, a lot of the times we can set it on auto bid and it will do just as well as if we wanted it to be just doing anything else. But I mean, you have to have some pieces set up properly for that. You've got to make sure you've got the right goals assigned, that sort of thing, which is really important, goes back to that setup piece. But yeah, in my opinion, for advertising, Facebook probably has one of the more intuitive algorithms that's out there.
Amen to that. And I mean, for an advertising platform, just think about that from the concept that you literally can trust the advertising platform that is natively wired to want to spend your money.
Right.
And advertisers, by and large, as we talk to them, are trusting Facebook actually far greater than AdWords.
Yes.
To be able to accurately work inside the fencing that you give it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, Michelle, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. We wanted to kind of wrap up with a couple things, just about your insights into the industry that you're in. Sure. What bugs you about the industry right now?
So what bugs me, honestly, we talked
I leave this at the end because if we started at the beginning, it would just
we would just go on a tangent and it just wouldn't be great. Yeah, no, I totally understand. I think the thing that kind of bothers me the most is the short-sighted piece, kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's not having the patience. It's wanting to grab as much as you can from the bottom of the funnel without feeding the top of the funnel.
Sure.
And it's a frustration for me because my job is to grab as much as I can. And if we're not fueling the funnel that I need to grab from, I don't have anything that I can do to be able to pull those levers. So I think that's one of the pieces that let's grab everybody that we can, get as many leads as we can from search, the bottom of the funnel, let's move them through the funnel, that sort of thing. But if we're not also going out there and being able to introduce your brand to the right people and be able to create a compelling message for why they should work with you, especially if you've got some of those in-market audiences, if they're already supposed to be looking and in the market for a specific thing and you sell that specific thing, get out in front of them and at least have like a high-touch introduction to your brand, because down the line, it might not happen right away, which everybody wants stuff to happen in month, which is another time constraint that's frustrating. But down the line, in a few months, maybe in a couple of quarters, those people will start to come back, and if you've given the right message at the beginning and they're still in the market for it, then they'll come back, they'll search for you, they'll recognize your brand, and you'll have a leg up on them in the search engine. So just being able to have not only short-term goals, because we're always optimizing toward those, but being able to have some of the long-term goals in mind and being able to prep for that.
Excellent. So conversely, what excites you about the industry?
Honestly, audiences are a huge piece. Like what we've talked about today is one of the most impactful things that we've been able to do for a while. It's the biggest thing since keywords in my mind, because it's the other way to target people, right?
Right.
I think that the amount of things that you can do with audiences and how you can layer them and how you can get really specific and speak to a specific audience is really getting to a point where if you're not doing it, you're going to be falling behind to a certain degree. I think having an AdWords account is fantastic. If you're not using any audiences, just start with building out a basic set of retargeting audiences around some pretty basic features of your site. If you have different product categories, like you said, or if you've got a handful of different services that you've got, start breaking those out by the services and be able to have things separated, layer them into your search audiences, and understand how those people behave. There's a lot of things you can do to tailor your advertising to the different audience that you're speaking to, whether it's through ad copy, different levers, all that sort of thing. So just the compounding pieces that you can do on top of that is one of the things that excites me the most, because I don't think as many people are taking advantage of it as they should be.
No, they're not. And I mean, for those of you who have a website out there that's literally a brochure piece, right? Like a threefold brochure,
Right.
you're not going to get nearly the type of audience qualification if you just, as opposed to just investing some time and understanding and thinking about your potential consumer. You unpack that, go into a user persona exercise, you're going to find so much content that you can put on the site. And guess what? You don't have to have a content-laden site, but just a smartly designed site that's going to match the consumer's intent wherever they are.
Right.
Then the AI, the software that you advertise in is going to be able to pick up on that. Now, it's fantastic. I mean, that's the core. It's the discipline of the marketer to not just think topographically or topically, but go deeper into unpacking some of the content that the consumers are looking for, right?
Yeah.
All right. Fetching up. Hey, we asked you pre-show what's amazing about Michelle Morgan.
Yeah, I think the thing that people are most surprised about is that I played golf in college for our college golf team.
There are legitimate scholarships for golf.
That's how it was weird driving off the day that I graduated. And it's like, I didn't pay this place a dime, but this is
are you
pretty
serious?
great. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's the way to do it. I mean, go out, find what interests you, and there's probably a scholarship for it, one way, shape, or form, whether it's academic or athletic.
I gotta ask.
Yeah.
I was a golfer in high school. I played on a golf team in high school.
Nice.
And so I got asked about the Masters. I assume you watched.
I did.
What'd you think?
I did watch. I thought it was really good. I enjoy seeing a group of people playing really good golf, and I really enjoyed being able to watch a guy first time coming out and winning. And not just crap the bed at the end of it. One of the things, I was listening to the commentary, and I want to say it was Nick Faldo at one point. It was like Saturday morning or something, and he's like, watch this guy's tempo in his golf swing. And he was absolutely right. Every time, same tempo, even on the 18th tee, even on his last putt on the last hole, his tempo going up. He didn't change his routine, anything like that, because he had it. He has the skills to do it, and he just let his expertise take over. So he didn't get in his head. I liked that.
Very cool. And I was amazed that I saw it briefly.
You watched?
I watched that. And that last shot was like a 70-footer, what? Or a 70-foot putt or something like that? Or one of the last shots?
Not the last shot. No, last shot was like tap in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One preceding. It was a pretty cool shot. Sure. Anyway, I've never seen that many almost like chest thumping, and the crowd was, I've never seen that level of energy for golf.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Oh, yeah. Golfers they're getting pretty excited nowadays, so getting a little rowdy, getting a little bit more than a golf clap.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great to know, because people need to know there's a way to educate yourself on that sport, and it's a good space for a lot of people to jump into.
Absolutely.
So, is there anything that we could promote for you today?
I think you hit it at the beginning. I write for a couple of blogs. I'm going to be speaking at HeroConf next month. I've also got a speaking engagement at SMX Advanced in June.
Cool.
Go check out the Clix marketing blog. It's clixmarketing.com/blog. We've got a full team of folks that writes pretty frequently there. It's all PPC stuff. So if you liked what I talked about today, you'll probably like the blog. And I think that's probably it.
That's it. Well, we certainly want our audience to go check Michelle out over on Twitter, Michelle M SEM. Nothing on Facebook. Well, you probably have a private Facebook.
Yeah. I don't actually like Facebook that much. I love Twitter though. Twitter's fantastic. So if you want to ask me questions, I usually check Twitter pretty frequently. So definitely hit me up on Twitter.
And search LinkedIn, Michelle M SEM. We certainly appreciate your time, Michelle, and you certainly demonstrate a good deal of in-depth understanding and proficiency in the paid space. We also appreciate getting to the granular levels, because we want to have our listeners, our audience, be able to use this with utility, and you certainly provided that information today. So we really appreciate that. Any final thoughts for maybe aspiring SEM professionals that want to get into the digital marketing and paid side of things?
Yeah. Don't undervalue the relationships that you can have. The reason that I have the job that I have today is because I was friends with somebody on Twitter, and I retweeted a post from them, and they said, why don't you apply for this job? So I think that being able to build a network we as a PPC industry, if you are in PPC or interested in being into it, we are honestly very open, and we will share lots of different strategies. I will talk to you all day about strategy. I won't tell you who my clients are and how I use the strategy specifically, but we'll talk about that stuff all day. We're very open, welcoming. There's a Twitter chat every Tuesday at noon Eastern. It's just hashtag PPC chat. And there's a lot of good discussions that happen there. But then the thread is also open all the time for just questions anybody has, and we constantly have commentary. I know that there are some people that I met when I first got into the space in late 2010, 2011. We actually had the 7th anniversary of PPC chat last week, and it was a bunch of us that I have come to know and call really good friends. And I only get to see them at industry events maybe a couple times a year, but I know more about them than I know about my neighbors.
Oh, wow.
Very
cool.
good friends.
Well, check out those resources, and we're certainly going to have in our show notes a number of the links to your articles as well as Clix Marketing. So thanks so much for spending time in studio with us today. We really appreciate it, Michelle.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
More than welcome. Well, thanks for listening to Edge of the Web Radio. Special thank you to our colleagues at Site Strategics, as well as our title sponsor, Site Strategics, and our guest, Michelle Morgan. Be sure to check out all the must-see videos, all the audio, and guess what? We got timestamps that are starting to happen on all of our podcasts now. So go to the site, and you can actually, if you don't like me talking so much, fast forward to the really good nuggets of gold. Although we're going to have a lot of timestamps with this show. Go over to edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. We'll talk to you next week. Tom, who's on the deck? Actually, we got 3 shows this week. Who's coming up?
Yeah, tomorrow we got Sherry Benelli.
Yep. And if you haven't checked out what we were talking about, we've had a really good time talking to Sherry online. There was a cool article that she rolled out, a 3-parter regarding SEO and podcasts. So we're going to actually talk about SEO and podcasts inside an SEO podcast. It's a little bit of digital marketing inception right here. So we will talk to you tomorrow. So check us out. Do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. Bye-bye.